Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Now once again you join me in the car. I apologise if the sound is horrible because it is absolutely tipping it down out there today. While we're on the subject of car, the second channel Random Car Reviews is back in action. It's been a long time. If you head over there now, well, we have a little update on the auction Land Rover that I'm sitting in now, 4 years after its purchase. I'm going to hopefully publish a lot more things on that channel in 2024, so check that out if you want to, of course. Today though, well, we're talking about graphics cards, and once again I've been to CEX, my local branch, a slightly different local branch, and picked up the cheapest on offer, which is in this bag. Now, we haven't actually tested this before on the channel. We've tested a sort of variant of this card on this channel before, but not this exact model, and I'm quite surprised. So this cost me £22, not much. I had a voucher for 30, so I actually got £5 back after trading in some old games. 24-month warranty, of course, at CEX. These can be found £5–6 cheaper on eBay, but that warranty made it a lot more tempting. The first thing I actually purchased wasn't the card, because you know me, I see a bargain and I have to have it. The first thing is actually, well, it cost me 10p, 10 British pence, and that, well, it's totally obsolete, but it's a Pentium E5200 processor. Terrible socket 775 processor, but for 10p, I just had to have it. The card, well, it's a little EVGA 650 Ti. We've tested the 650 Ti Boost, but not the standard 650 Ti on the channel, which surprises me. This one is in pretty good condition. We've got two DVIs here. We've got a mini HDMI rather than a standard HDMI. And surprisingly on this one we have a 6-pin connector. I think some models may have lacked a power connector. Not entirely sure, but this tiny little card, well, I like the look of it, and it'll be interesting to see what it can do in 2023 because it has just 1GB of VRAM, I'm led to believe by the label on the top. So let's get it in the system and see what it can do in 2023. Now this is actually the super-clocked model, not just the standard super-clocked. I think they actually skipped a standard SC model with this one in favour of the SSC model, which has a 16% overclock straight from the factory. This also came in a 2GB variant, which would be much better in 2023, but the memory is the least of this card's worries, as you are about to find out. Let's take one last look at this GPU and see what it can or can't do. So, can it play Elden Ring? No, unfortunately it cannot. Red Dead Redemption 2 gives us a driver warning, and then it also gives us a video memory warning before finally crashing when we try and load the game, even at the lowest settings. So unfortunately that is not playable either. It might work for 30 seconds sometimes, but usually it crashes at the loading screen. I'm using the latest drivers for this card, 474.64, which was a security update as this no longer receives Nvidia's Game Ready GPU updates. I tried the new Avatar game as well. Yeah, this didn't want to work. When it came to Starfield, of course, we got an error, so no such luck there. The finals, this gave us a driver warning, as you can see. It did actually start, but after playing for about 10 seconds, it crashed. I did see 60 FPS at 720p with 33% render scale, but it crashed shortly after I was able to take a look at the figures, so I'm just left with a benchmark of the crash reporter rather than the actual game. We also got a hardware requirements warning for the finals as well before it crashed. I then tried The Last of Us, which of course this card lacks the DirectX feature level 4, so unfortunately that wouldn't work, but most of the games I actually tested here that didn't work probably wouldn't have run very well anyway. But now let's talk about the things that did run. Cyberpunk 2077, for example, at 720p with the lowest settings, hit 20 frames per second. Now we do have FSR 2.1 in this game, but we can't actually use it because the card just gives us a black screen. This card does not support this latest version of FSR. Intel XeSS does work, on the other hand, but it turns everything into a pixelated and slow motion mess, so unfortunately we have to stick to 720p native in this case. Counter-Strike 2 has an older version of FSR which can be enabled and will help at 1080p, but the game does look quite horrible when using it, so I found that 720p native with the lowest settings was the best bet, and actually we saw a pretty decent frame rate here of over 120 FPS on average, with a few problems here and there. The Witcher 3 at 720p once again, of course, with the lowest settings, and TAA this time around scored us 44 frames per second with some dips and drops. Again, this has a newer version of FSR available, but enabling it gives us nothing but a black screen. So this was the best option here, 720p native all the way. Grand Theft Auto 5, slightly older, so runs like a dream at 1080p with the lowest or normal settings. We probably could have pushed things up a little bit as well, but even so we saw 94 FPS with percentile figures that stayed above 60. Not bad. Speaking of pushing the settings higher, I think we could have done the same in Fortnite, which here was running in performance mode at 1080p once again, albeit with the lowest settings for a 105 FPS average. These low settings meant that we saw at least, or very close to, 60 FPS. We didn't drop too much below it in terms of that 1% figure, and so turning things up would have been a bit more problematic for the consistency. But there we go. The 650 Ti in 2023, not that great, but exactly what I expected, and it's going to be the lack of modern driver support, the 1GB VRAM, and the just general weakness of the card that's going to hold it back these days. Now in the new year, I'm going to lay off these sort of individual graphics card benchmarks a little bit, so this may be the last one for a while. I'm going to focus on sort of more unique products, full builds and unusual components, I think. So hopefully you can continue joining me into 2024 when we'll be messing around with some unique and perhaps more rare hardware too. Thank you, and I'll see you all again soon.